Welcome to Season 8 of Village's Vitality Life, Seniors Life Unscripted. In this new season, we talk to leaders of clubs and interesting folks who live in and around the villages. We also talk to people who have information vital to seniors. You will get perspectives of what is happening in and around the villages, Florida. In addition, we will add more information for all seniors.
Village's Vitality, Senior Life Unscripted. I'm here today with Paul Bendheim, MD, the clinical professor of neurology at the University of Arizona College of Medicine, Phoenix, and founder of BrainSavers. We'll talk a lot about BrainSavers, which is an evidence-based, multimodal, brain plus body, total fitness and wellness program. BrainSavers' pioneering approach aligns with multi-domain lifestyle interventions subsequently validated in the finger and U.S. pointer trials and the World Health Organization's 2026 Dementia Risk Reduction Guidelines. Paul, thanks for joining us.
My mission in life is to help our aging population reduce their risk of Alzheimer's disease.
Good. The first question, natural question from our audience is, what is the finger and U.S. pointer?
Those were two major multi-million-dollar studies that completely turned the previous central dogma of the aging brain upside down. The finger study was done in Scandinavia, led by a group of Finnish investigators, and they looked at 1,200 at-risk aging Scandinavians. Half of that group were entered into a multimodal, multi-component lifestyle program, as well as getting medical advice to control diabetes if it was present or hypertension. The control group only got general medical advice. After 2 years, the active group showed significantly better cognitive function than the control group. That was published in The Lancet in 2015. Last year, in fact, it's almost exactly a one-year anniversary, July 28, 2025, the U.S. Alzheimer's Association, headquartered in Chicago, announced the results of their $50 million study, and the NIH contributed up to another $50 million to look at biomarkers. And that study was not duplicative of the finger study, but another multi-component lifestyle trial. The difference is there were two active arms in the pointer study. One arm attended group sessions led by an instructor in which they did these multi-component aspects of lifestyle, socialization, cognitive exercises, physical exercise, healthy nutrition. The other group got the same material, but they did it on their own. Both groups improved, but the active group with the instructor improved more. So this has now completely changed the paradigm of how we approach the risk of dementia and cognitive impairment with age. We were taught, the dogma was that you had this amazing organ you were born with, nothing like it in the universe. But about the age of 40, it started to unravel. And if you were unlucky, it unraveled more quickly, and you became, back then, the term was senility. Now that term, if you were more fortunate, your brain did not unravel and you lived to a ripe old age with your memories intact, your cognition intact, and all the positive aspects of a healthy brain. So when I first came up with the idea of BrainSavers, I quickly found out, didn't speak up among my academic neurology colleagues because it was considered voodoo science to say that lifestyle could perhaps change that slope of unhealthy brain aging. But thanks to the finger study and then the pointer study, now this is front and center. And as you mentioned, the WHO guidelines just came out last week, the 2026 version. I think the last time they did this was in 2019. They now make front and center that a multimodal, a multi-component lifestyle program should be implemented around the world to reduce the increasing global burden of cognitive impairment with age and specifically dementia, of which Alzheimer's is the primary cause.
Paul, do you know how large those studies were, how many individuals were involved?
Yeah. So the finger study, if I remember correctly, was about 1,200, 600 in each arm. The U.S. pointer study was over 2,000 people. one of the important aspects of the Pointer study done in this country is that they looked at diverse groups, different ethnicities, different races, different socioeconomic backgrounds. So it's applicable by extension to a much larger audience than the finger study, in which the Scandinavian population was much more homogeneous.
And Paul, why did you start BrainSavers?
So, I was taught by no less a luminary than Houston Merritt, who was the professor and chairman of neurology in Manhattan at Columbia. I went there as a student in my fourth year thinking I might want to do my residency there. He would meet with the students every week. We would sit on the floor of the auditorium, and he would sit in his chair and entertain us with stories of his long and illustrious career. But one day, he captured that central dogma by saying the worst thing about growing old is listening to my neurons commit suicide by diving into the ventricular lake. That struck me, and it's in my book. And then fast forward to about 2003, 4, I was asked to review a grant from a philanthropy where I serve on the Medical Scientific Advisory Board. And this grant was asking for funding to study physical exercise, specifically walking, an aerobic exercise, in an at-risk group of sedentary aging adults. So I did a little background reading, and I thought, wow, maybe this has some legs. And the idea popped into my mind to build health clubs, health facilities for aging Americans, with the emphasis on what I call the 15 or 20 muscles inside your brain. People understand exercising muscles makes them stronger. And so I wrote a business plan, and I showed it to a couple folks that I respected and trusted. And they both said, well, pretty good. How are you going to get money to build bricks and mortar in Florida and Arizona, wherever you want to put these places? Why don't you develop the program and provide it to existing channels, senior centers and the like? So that was the big pivot. And we did that. And I'm, really pleased that I was able to attract some smart people, nutritionists, physical exercise experts, a geropsychologist and the like, to now we have 2 years of curriculum in the program. And it's a live instructor-led program that encompasses the 6 pillars of BrainSavers. So someone can start, let's say, August 1st, and go twice a week for an hour for 2 years and get new information and build their cognitive reserve using neuroplasticity.
Paul, is the program classroom education or is it physical exercise?
Well, it's fairly structured. Starts off with a couple minutes of relaxation, meditation, so people are getting rid of some of the stress they come with so they can learn. And then the first section is what we call a cognitive movement activity, thinking and moving at the same time. The best example is dancing. You have to think and move at the same time. And so that gets people warmed up. And then the next section is the actual physical exercise part, with about 15 minutes of aerobics, with some weight, strength bearing, some flexibility and balance thrown in. That's followed by the formal cognitive exercise, where we teach techniques to improve your memory, process new information more quickly. And then that's followed by the mini lecture on one of the 6 pillars. So maybe on Monday, you're going to learn some more about healthy sleep habits. And then the next week, you're going to learn about the difference between omega-3s and omega-6 fatty acids. So we have these 6 pillars, and they're all covered in rotation, and the lessons build on one another. And we've organized the curriculum in quarter blocks, 12-week blocks. And that way, new people can join at the beginning of a quarter. The first week is a review and a catch-up. And it's, gratifying. People like doing it. And I think the key is, Mike, the socialization aspect. A number of people that come to these classes have lost their spouse, friends have moved, and the socialization aspect is enormous. And the further I get into this, the more I realize that may be the single most important aspect. If someone comes to me, well, Doc, I don't do any of those 6. Where do I start? I think I still would answer, start moving. Any movement is better than no movement. And it will affect your attitude. It'll affect your brain's health. It'll affect your heart's health. And especially if you do it outside, you'll meet other people. So you get the socialization aspect. And people that move and start moving for the first time or more, they start thinking about the fuel they put into their bodies. And so they'll start thinking about eating a more healthy diet. And people that exercise sleep better. And that's another one of the 6 pillars. And that's clear risk factor. Poor sleep hygiene, poor sleep is a big risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. So it's gratifying now that a number of big authorities, including WHO and others, recommend these multimodal lifestyle programs to preserve and enhance brain health.
Paul, how do you start or give advice to someone who is living a sedentary, dementary type of a lifestyle? You know, watching 6 or 8 hours of television every day.
Yeah. So again, I think the easiest way to start is by starting a very mild exercise program. Get up off the couch, go outside and take a 5 or 10 minute walk. And if you haven't been exercising, you may feel that your breathing is a bit labored. So you continue that very mild exercise for a number of weeks until you feel like, I'm feeling a little bit stronger when I walk. Then add 5 minutes. The goal is to build to about 30 minutes 5 times a week. And you don't have to be marathon running. You have to be moving, and preferably with a friend, a spouse, so that you're having a conversation. And when you start, you're going to find that you have to take an extra breath or two to complete a sentence. But as you progress, that's going to reduce the need. And you don't have to measure your heart rate. You're doing good things for your body.
But let's take a short break here and listen to an Alzheimer's tip from Dr. Craig Curtis.
Amyloid is the spark and tau is the fire. We have this spark sparking for 20 years without symptoms. Once the spark causes the fire, the breakdown of tau inside the cell, we start to see symptoms. We are actively researching ways to stop tau as well.
Is it possible to regrow new brain cells to replace the ones tau has killed?
That's a hot topic. Scientists, for the most part, do not believe that we can regenerate any brain cells. There have been a few research papers published in the last 4 or 5 years that hint that there might be some brain cell regeneration, specifically in a part of the brain called the hippocampus, which ironically is where Alzheimer's disease starts, but it's really hard to prove that in humans.
With over 20 years of experience studying brain health, Dr. Curtis's goal is to educate the Village's community on how to live a longer, healthier life. To learn more, visit his website, craigcurtismd.com, or call 352-500-5252 to attend a free seminar.
Thank you, Dr. Curtis. I'm back with Paul Bendheim talking about SAVER, how you can exercise your brain. That's where I'm going to put it.
Yeah. Use it or lose it, Mike. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but use it or lose it.
How do you deal with people who tell you something like, I feel my memory is slipping. What should I do?
That's the most common complaint in a memory disorders clinic or a dementia Alzheimer's clinic, because it's usually, not always, but most commonly the first presenting symptom of somebody who has dementia or a mild stage before they're actually demented. That's called mild cognitive impairment. But remember, your brain, like every organ in your body, suffers wear and tear as you age. So some memory impairment, some more frequent forgetfulness is not abnormal. Mike, if you forget tomorrow morning where you put your car keys, that is not diagnostic of Alzheimer's. That's normal age-related forgetfulness. So the key is, if you're not doing things that protect your memory, protect your brain, you need to start. And again, we go through the same protocols. Start moving, start sleeping better, get your hearing and vision checked. Both of those now are recognized as risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. Socialize. All the things that may be reduced in your life after you've retired, after you've moved away. At BrainSavers, we introduce the concept of the World Brain Gym. What is that? You know, our classes, our sessions are 2 hours a week. You can't do everything in 2 hours that you should be doing. How do you exercise for 150 minutes when there's only 120 minutes? And that's only 12 to 15 minutes of each class. So the World Brain Gym in the villages are all the wonderful opportunities to participate in all sorts of programs, classes, socializing, whether it's on the golf course or in one of the common restaurants. So that's the World Brain Gym. And every community of any size is teeming with activities that are fun and are brain strengthening.
I participate in several improv clubs here in the villages. The first 15 minutes of every session, having people work in either small groups or in a large circle, and we end every session in a group exercise, and everyone loves it.
Yeah.
It is very energizing. It's a stimulus for people's brains, because we'll do an exercise passing a whoosh around the room, and then it'll say, okay, we're going to do the same thing faster.
We have variations of that in our BrainSavers curriculum. In fact, if let's say you and I were in the class together and we have a ball, we toss that ball back and forth, but as we're tossing it, we have to start naming vegetables or fruits going through the alphabet. And so that's another thinking and moving activity. Yep. You know, there's no magic bullet, Mike, for protecting your brain. It's really using it and using your body in a whole variety of fun and engaging activities. And when it comes specifically to your brain, if you're a fluent Spanish speaker, you're not going to do a whole lot of good for your brain by going to a Spanish class that you could basically do when you're asleep. You need to challenge your brain, but again, just like physical activity, you want to challenge it modestly and build upon it. And that is a tremendous builder of what is known now as cognitive reserve. You strengthen your brain.
Your book is titled The Brain Training Revolution. Why did you come up with that title?
When I wrote the book, it was at the cusp of this major shift in the paradigm of the aging brain. And so it was a revolution. The multimodal lifestyle program has revolutionized what we can do to be proactive in protecting our brain. And it's training. Just like you train to be physically capable, you need to train your brain to maintain it and actually enhance it.
Someone's been diagnosed with an early case of Alzheimer's. Can BrainSavers them?
Our program is designed to be a risk reduction prevention program. We never promote it as a treatment of any sort. But there's increasing literature that if you make your lifestyle healthier, you may slow the progression of cognitive impairment. Even the normal wear and tear that we all suffer from as we age can be minimized, reduced. But let me back up. So when you say diagnose, I'm assuming you mean somebody who's gone to a qualified physician and had a very adequate and complete workup. Because there are mimics of Alzheimer's disease that are treatable and reversible. And even though they're a relatively small percentage of the total cases, no one wants to miss one of those.
I understand there's some vitamin deficiencies that...
Well, there are, yeah. Even occasionally
Alzheimer's.
a benign tumor pressing on the brain. Mm-hmm. There are a number, some thyroid conditions can mimic. And the biggest one that should never be missed is depression. Chronic depression is a very active stressor to the brain. And people with longstanding depression can be almost indistinguishable from somebody with Alzheimer's disease. And it's treatable. Yeah. There's a lot of stress in people's lives, and chronic stress can lead to depression. And there you have it.
Let's take a quick break.
Village's Vitality listeners, I've got some good news for you. In Season 8, most new episodes were released as both audio and video versions. Videos on Apple Podcasts, Buzzsprout, and YouTube. If you're listening via our Buzzsprout feed, you can ask questions via the fan mail button or leave me comments as a text, or in our new feature, you can send it as a voicemail. If you'd like a response, make sure you leave your name, email address, and cell phone number. So if someone walks into a room and doesn't remember why they walked into the room, is that an early Alzheimer's symptom?
Did you talk to my wife before this? Mine,
Yeah,
on our front door, she has car keys, sunglasses, cell phone. She knows I'm going to leave the house without one of those or more than one of those three. So the answer is emphatically no. You're distracted. Maybe you turned on the stove to heat up some soup, and then you remember that you remember that you left your cell phone in the bedroom, but you want to make sure the soup is not going to overboil. By the time you get up to go, you can't remember why you left to go to the room. It'll come back. So that's,
Okay.
don't worry about that. That's, again, normal age-related forgetfulness.
So there are a number of drugs on the market now aimed at Alzheimer's disease. And how effective do you think they really are?
Well, so there's 2 monoclonal antibodies approved by the FDA for MCI, mild cognitive impairment, or early mild stage dementia. And they wouldn't be approved by the FDA if they didn't show some efficacy. And I know, because I led a team with a drug candidate for Alzheimer's disease to the FDA. I know how professional they are and how concerned they are with patient safety. That's their first concern. Is this proposed treatment safe for people to take? Only after that's established do they look at if is it effective for the disease, in this case, Alzheimer's. And so both of these monoclonal antibodies were approved. They have limited efficacy. They don't cure people, but they definitely slow progression. They're very expensive, and they're both associated with some adverse effects that can be serious. It's such an active research area, every major and some minor pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, because we're in an epidemic now of Alzheimer's, with 10,000 boomers turning 65 every day, and advancing age being the biggest risk factor for dementia, specifically for Alzheimer's disease. The number of Americans, currently about 7 million, is going to double in the next 20, 25 years if we don't find a way to either delay the onset or prevent it. And that's where I'm proud of all the research that people have done to demonstrate that lifestyle, which really doesn't have any side effects, exercising, eating well, sleeping well, is now front and center in this crusade against age-related cognitive impairment, age-related brain deterioration, and dementia, specifically Alzheimer's disease. And I would mention the second most common cause of dementia is what we call vascular dementia, in which there are multiple small strokes, and those add to dementia. And often, both conditions, Alzheimer's and vascular dementia, coexist. And so a healthy lifestyle, we've known this from the Framingham study. If you do physical exercise, eat better, manage your high blood pressure if you haven't, diabetes, you reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease, which includes stroke.
There's on the market now that are aimed at removing both amyloid and tau from the brain. Do you think those are going to provide any avenue for cure for Alzheimer's in the near term?
I don't think in the very near term, but there's a lot of excitement about using combination therapies, much like chemotherapy evolved, various cancers. And I'm a believer that the answer eventually, I don't know if we're going to cure the disease with that approach, but I think we can come close to stopping its progression. If you relieve the brain of its burden of these toxic proteins, amyloid and certain forms of tau, you should reduce the progression of the neuropathology, the death of brain cells.
Now, will exercise that a senior does cause more brain cells to grow?
And the answer, surprisingly, is yes. That before, I and a whole lot of others got into this field, again, the central dogma was that you were losing brain cells. There was nothing you can do about it. We now know there is some neurogenesis, some birth of new brain cells in the adult brain. And what's interesting, the number one area is the hippocampus, is the seahorse. That's what the word means in Greek, is the seahorse-shaped structure in your temporal lobes. That's where memories are made. That's the first area that's often affected pathologically in Alzheimer's disease, and explains what we talked about earlier, why memory complaints are often the presenting symptom in somebody who's developing Alzheimer's disease. So that's where there's now evidence that you can grow new cells, and there may be some new growth in the frontal lobes. And the other aspect of changing your brain's architecture is increasing the number of synapses. Those are the connections between brain cells. Each single brain cell connects with about 10,000 others, and amyloid interferes with those connections. And so that's what we see pathologically. And the denser your synaptic connections, the higher your threshold is for degeneration and a disease like Alzheimer's. So that's what we call cognitive reserve. And that is built by using your brain. So if you, let's say, start learning French tomorrow, as an example, Mike, you're going to grow synapses in certain parts of your brain. My favorite example when I talk to groups is if you're right-handed, you brush your teeth with your right hand. Switch to your left hand, and you'll find that you're going to bruise your gums for the first few days. But over time, you're going to become more facile with your left hand, your non-dominant hand. And if we could do MRI studies, you'll see a growth of the network there in the motor cortex that controls the left hand. So that's changing the architecture of your brain. That's in a very focal region. By doing a variety of brain-stimulating activities, which we've touched on, you're going to stimulate the growth of synapses throughout the brain. And learning a language is my favorite example, because that really works your brain in multiple areas.
Does music play any part in your program?
Well, we don't actually incorporate music lessons, but we certainly encourage. There's literature now showing that music therapy is beneficial to the aging brain. I use it personally as a stress reliever. Listening to classical music for me for 10 minutes calms me down. And so really a variety of whatever it is that makes you happy, whether it's classical music, looking at beautiful artwork, planning a trip to Italy, anything like that is brain strengthening. The key is, just like with exercise, you can't go for a walk today and say, wow, protected my heart and my brain forever. You got to build on that. The continuing practice of brain healthy lifestyles is what's vitally important.
Paul, are there any questions that I failed to ask you today that you'd like to put into the podcast today to tell people?
The critical thing is for everybody to become their own healthy brain quarterback. You have to decide how important making some changes in your lifestyle are if you know that they're going to provide benefits for years. So that would be my suggestion. Look at your lifestyle. If you're not moving, start moving. If you're eating a highly processed diet, start adding fruits and vegetables, salads, and make transitions over time. And do this with friends, family. It's much easier. That's why I think our classes are so successful. There's an instructor, a coach there, and you have other people who will reinforce your beneficial ideas, and you'll exchange ideas with them.
Paul, if someone wants to get more information about the BrainSavers program and maybe where it's taught in their locale, how do they do that?
I think the easiest way is just to go to our website, BrainSavers.com, and make an outreach. We're growing now, and more communities, whether it be at senior centers or YMCAs or Jewish community centers, or the city of Dallas Parks and Rec Department now is giving our program in a number of their community centers that cater to seniors. And so we're here to help everybody and anyone who wants to do something good for themselves and good for their community.
Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Mike. Thank you for your good work in bringing this sort of information to the public.
Remember, our next episode will be released next Friday at 9 a.m. Should you want to become a major supporter of the show or have questions, please contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. This is a shout out for supporters Tweet Coleman, Ed Williams, Duane Romick, Paul Sorgan, and Dr. Craig Curtis at K2 in the Villages. We will be hearing more from Dr. Curtis with short Alzheimer's tips each week. If you know someone who should be on the show, contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. The way our show grows is with your help. Text your friends about this show if you enjoyed listening. Use the fan mail button on our homepage, villagesvitality.life, to leave comments. Be sure to include your name, email, and phone number. We thank everyone for listening The content of the show is copyrighted by Roth Voice 2026, all rights reserved.